Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 277 to 279 for the 27 to 29 of November for the Ukraine war, or the Russian special military operation that always lasts forever. Anyway, let's start off with Ukrainian statement on shoot downs. They reported on the 28th that they shot down a Sukhoi 25 and a Sukhoi 24. Moving this is on the 28th. Moving on to missile strikes. So there's a significant missile strike on this train station, the Musievka train station. So it's just off Kryvyi Rih, on the western side of Kryvyi Rih city, where the Russians missiles strike a tank brigade that was being loaded on the railway transport and everything. Then so it's significant enough for the Russians to actually mention it, because usually I don't talk about missile strikes, except that it hits train station is pretty significant. On the southern front, there's no updates other than the Ukrainians are complaining about shelling on Kherson and some of the border or the towns along the river, and we can objectively say that whoever that Twitter account is utter bullshit, and you should never believe anyone who would come out with ridiculous stories of this war that cannot be corroborated by anyone else. If you still follow that person, you can go and whatever. Moving on to the Zaporizhia line, the main line, the first three positions at Kayamsky, Orekiv, and Huaypole, there's nothing. But over at the Velika Novosilka, the Ukrainians are launching an offensive further south. Fighting is reported at Neshkushne and also at Blahodatne. The other name for this is actually Otyabir. So the Ukrainians are actually pushing down. I believe there is something to do with the situation over at Bakhmut or something. But the offensive is pretty wide because they continue to attack. There's fighting reported at Prashestivka and at Shevchenko and Pelivka. So the Ukrainians, these are all on the 27th. The one at Prashestivka is pretty bad because I didn't paste in the entire story by Military Chronicles, but reportedly the forces, there's 3 different units entering Prashestivka. 2 of them retreated, 1 of them got surrounded, and 80% of them got wiped out. But of course, because this kind of story might be a fake, it might be made up, so which is why I don't really want to go too deep into it. But it didn't went very well. And as you can see that because the last report was on the 27th, we did not have any report on the 28th or 29th, as this is for 3 days, which means that this entire offensive kind of went south. Moving on to Novomykhailivka, we have fighting reported by both sides on the 27th. Both claim that they are the one defending, and there's no more report of fighting since then. And for the Russians, continuing to push at Marinka on the 28th or 29th, the Russians are reportedly still attacking the Marinka region, and the progress is very, very slow because this area is heavily mined and everything is destroyed. A lot of troops are being sent to the front to hold the offense, so nothing much. The Russians are also continuing to try to overcome the fortified positions and entrenched position over at Krasnohorivka. The last report was for the yesterday 29 by War Gonzo. On the 28th, it was reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. And over at the Pisky region, the Russians seem to be pushing pretty hard over the past 3 days over at the Pisky region, where we have reported fighting over at Nevelsky, Pervomaisky, Vodian, and Opaine. At Opaine, they are not fighting at Opaine. It's actually the Russian forces is pushing out from Opaine. The most likely direction is actually towards Jevene rather than towards Adivka. But this is all these 3 lines are not easy to overcome, which is why it will take some time before they will actually reach another settlement over at the Opaine region. And moving on to New York region, there's nothing much around here. I do remember reading something about reinforcement coming to Torex, because they are kind of preparing for the eventuality where the Russians might actually launch an offensive towards this city over here. Tentatively, the Russians are ignoring this entire front line here of New York Torex region. Their focus is still over here in the Bakhmut front. At the Bakhmut front, major developments over the past 3 days. The Russian forces overcome initial Ukrainian counteroffensive, and they managed to capture Ozeryanivka, Zelenopilia, as well as this location here at Andriivka. This happens on the 28th, and on the 29th we have confirmation that the Russian forces have captured Kurdyomivka, which is actually this bigger town just off Zelenopilia. And with this capture, it seems to be confirming that the Russians have captured the entire eastern bank of this canal. As you can see, there's this canal or river thingy. They have effectively captured this, and they also have effective control over this road from Kurdyomivka moving up north over to Andriivka. And the Ukrainians don't if you look at the map, the Ukrainians would not have a very settlement-like defense anymore until pretty far away. So from Ozeryanivka to Delievka is actually almost 5 kilometers away. Bilohora is a bit further. This is the edge of Bilohora. There's also 3-4 kilometers. So the most likely line we might be seeing is actually pretty far away. So the Ukrainians might want to hold up on these forest lines, but it remains to be seen whether they want to hold it up there, depending on what the Russian deploy, because they might get themselves killed. The initial report now is that the Ukrainians are actually retreating away from this line here at this moment, and we shall see whether we have any reports or information on the new line of defense from the Ukrainians. We do have some entrenched positions. You can see there's an initial entrenchment before the war that was here. Another one is here. You can see this is very big, and there is another one, smaller one here. So it's not entire. The Russians has not entirely pushed out of the initial fortifications, of the pre-war fortifications, I mean. So there will be some time, and there's another line behind. So it's not going to be a total collapse where the Russians are just going to capture 20-30 over towns in the next week. It's unlikely to be that case. The Ukrainians are still redeploying their troops over from Kherson, and there are reports that the Ukrainians are reinforcing the forces over here from Zaporizhia as well, which means that the Zaporizhia super duper uber offensive is not going to happen. There is airstrike reported at Chasiv here, where position of foreign fighters were discovered and hit with airstrike, these high precision weapons, so most likely cruise missiles. So reportedly 100 foreign fighters were killed over at this position. So this is actually a reserve position. You can see that this is actually this is like 10-11 kilometers away from the front line. Nowhere is safe in the modern warfare, even though you think that you're in the rear, but you still can get hit. So that's pretty shitty. Some of these captures are also confirmed by Deep State UA, a pro-Ukrainian source. I've seen Ozeryanivka, I think Zelenopilia as well. So these captures are pretty much legitimate. The Russians are now pushing very hard for Klishevka, and there is also reports of Russians entering Opyne after 2 days of Ukrainian counteroffensive over at Opyne region, where the Ukrainians are trying to push out. So there is some contradicting information about Orekivka. Some people are messaging me telling me that Orekivka has been captured by the Russian forces. I just gonna wait for more information. It's still pretty much contested. The previous report is that it was captured, according to my reporting, and it was actually disputed by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. So we shall see how this goes. If the front line move too far, then the claim by Ukrainian Defense Ministry would likely to be invalidated. Then the front line can be more straight and consistent. The Russians are continuing to push over at the southeastern part of Bakhmut. There's fighting reported at Bakhmut, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. But of course, the fighting is unlikely to be within Bakhmut itself. So we are considering that it's likely to be in the southeast, where most of the fighting is reported. In the north and northeastern part of Bakhmut city, we do not have any reports of fighting. The last reported fighting was at Pihorodne. We didn't see any fighting since then. So the Russians are pushing mainly in the southern part of Bakhmut, in a likely flank to the rear from the south. So according to the analysis I have just posted around 12 hours ago, you may want to go and take a look at that, where I did mention that the likely next move is from the north and northeast part of Bakhmut. The fighting is reported at Soledar and Bakhmutske on the 27 and 28, where the Russian Defense Ministry claimed that the Ukrainians are attacking Soledar and Bakhmutske. So 27 on the 28th, and on the 27th, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry also claims the Russians are attacking. So currently, this is still very contested, as the fighting is within the city. So it's not going to be easy, and I believe this is going to take a very long time to clear out. There's heavy fighting over at Yakovlivka, where the Russian Defense Ministry reported on 28 that the Ukrainians were attacking, so probably a counteroffensive. But according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, over the past 3 days, mainly the Russians are the one attacking Yakovlivka. Heavy fighting is also reported at Bilohorivka. Similarly, the Ukrainians did try to counterattack over on the 28th. And there is no reported fighting over at Berestove. However, the Ukrainian forces seems to have lost Sperne. According to Ryba, on the 29th, yesterday, they claim that Sperne has been captured by the Russian forces. Currently, I'm still looking for one more corroboration, not just on Ryba only. There is fighting reported on the 28th and the 29th, which is why this deep state UA yesterday on the 29th said that fighting continues in the area of the village of Sperne, which is why I cannot just confirm and move the front line just yet. So we are still waiting for more confirmation about the capture of Sperne. And then the Russian forces is pushing at Verkhan-Okanyamske on the 28th and 29th, and also at Bilohorivka on the 28th and 29th. So the Russians are now doing a massive offensive over at the Siversk front. And interestingly, we do have reports of fighting at Serebryanka. The first report was on the 28th by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, and then it was then reported by War Gonzo on the 29th for the 29th. So if you think this is a bit weird, it's because the Russian forces actually do control more or less around this area between Bilohorivka and Verkhan-Okanyamske, which is why they might be pushing inwards in this direction and then attack Serebryanka from the southeast. Most likely that's the case, because that was what happened 4 months ago. And furthest the Russians have managed to go was actually around this area, which is a high ground, is a hill. So this was the previous time the furthest they went for the Russian forces, and then they got pushed back all the way to the Luhansk border. So this looks like another major offensive, and the fact that the Russians are able to attack Serebryanka might suggest that the Ukrainian forces here is also running low on manpower. The capture of Sperne, which is a battle for the past 2-3 months, very fierce battle, means that the Ukrainians are actually struggling to hold up the eastern front now. The losses in the south and this progress over at Sperne, the Russians attacking at Serebryanka, things are not looking good for the Ukrainians. There is reported fighting over at Dibrova, over at the Crimea front. So this is Crimea city. There is fighting reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. But there is a one-off, nothing much. So, and then there is fighting reported towards Chervonopopivka on the 29th. So after a long hiatus, a long wait, the Ukrainians did not launch any attack around this region. Shelling is reported at Chervonopopivka on the 27th, which actually destroyed the Ukrainian attempt to actually fortify this area here. There's and also this area here of Ploshchanka. And that's all from the Crimea Liman front. So in case you don't know where's Liman, this is Crimea. So moving up further north to the Svatove front, there is fighting reported at Stemakivka on the 29th, where the Russians are reported by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry to be attacking this position. Previously, on the 27th, the Russian did a massive bombardment over at this region to destroy some Ukrainian forces gathering to try to launch an offensive. There is fighting reported at Kuzemivka on the 28th. The attack, it came from the direction of Berestove, and then over at Novoselivsky, there is fighting reported on the 27th and the 28th. On the 27th is the Ukrainians actually launching the attack. On the 28th, the Russians actually do a counteroffensive. Currently, the situation here is still very fluid. And further up to the Kupiansk front at this Kupiansk city, over the Kupiansk region, there's fighting reported on the 29th at Ivanivka. So there is a Ukrainian force pushing towards this direction, but it seems to be a very small force because this is the only attack that was reported here. So accordingly, the Russian Defense Ministry claimed that the unit actually got pushed back to their initial position. Not sure where is the initial position though. Most likely this is just a DRG, the recon group. So that's all from the Kupiansk front, and I believe this is all. So that's all for the summary for the day of 277 to 279 for the 27th or 29th of November, and I'll see you in the next update.